everybody, back to a Tan Show on YouTube here. I'm here with my good friend and prolific Tan author, Father Jeffrey Kirby. Father, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
And we're doing a little series here on Catholic social doctrine and how it applies to the American voter in particular, since we have a big vote coming up soon in November between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And so, the American conscience needs to be formed in light of Holy Mother Church and her doctrine. Father, something that we discussed a while back, I've studied Catholic social teaching. I've called it that. And you were the one that really helped teach me that this is actually a doctrine of the church. The Catholic social doctrine is actually a subset of moral theology, right? So this isn't just disciplines being espoused by the church, or, I've heard a lot of conservative thinkers even say, yeah, the church needs to stick with religion and they need to leave, politics, out of it and economics out of it. But that's a misunderstanding, because these principles, these Catholic social doctrine principles are subsets of moral theology. So before we get to today's topic on immigration, let's kind of start high level and talk a little bit about, what is Catholic social doctrine, and what are the main pillars that Catholic social doctrine stand on. My understanding is solidarity and subsidiarity are two of the main pillars that all of this rests upon, and then we'll be able to discuss immigration in light of those two cornerstones or two pillars of this moral theology subset of the church.
Yes, absolutely, Con. In fact, it's obvious in one sense, but oftentimes we can miss the obvious that every political issue is a moral issue first. So it shouldn't surprise people that in her 2,000-year history, dealing with civilizations and cultures and different governments throughout her existence, Mother Church has a vast collection of wisdom, and it raises it to the point of a doctrine. So as you said, Catholic social doctrine, that the church has, discerned how the gospel should be applied, how it can be lived, and she has this Catholic social doctrine. Incidentally, some of our greatest Catholic writers have described our Catholic social doctrine as a hidden treasure. And that sounds good, but it's actually kind of sad, because it's not meant to be hidden.
Not meant to be hidden.
Right. Yeah. So I'm very glad we have this series to kind of allow some of the aspects of our tradition to see the light of day and to enter the more hearts of the faithful. So to your point, those two principles in terms of subsidiarity and solidarity, we have to start with those. If we don't understand those, we really can't do Catholic social doctrine well. So first, solidarity. Simply enough, that as a Christian, I am the brother, the sister of every other human being. I know a connection. There is no other person. There's no one beyond my love, my attention, my care. So solidarity, that I have a connection to every other human being. All right, good. Subsidiarity is, okay, that love has certain levels, and it begins with the closest relationship. So to those who are called to marriage, it's marriage, and then family, and it begins to expand. So we can say that subsidiarity reminds us that charity starts at home. Solidarity reminds us it doesn't end there. As the popular expression some time ago said, think globally, act locally, right? I don't know if you wrote that, but that's really a good summary of Catholic social doctrine. Now, the things we have to be careful of is if we have solidarity and we stretch it to its extreme, then solidarity without subsidiarity, right? So if they're not balancing each other, solidarity becomes socialism, communism.
Good, yeah.
Subsidiarity taken to the extreme without solidarity becomes fascism. We have these two extremes that we have to be careful of, which shows us that there has to be this delicate balance, and it is a delicate balance, between subsidiarity and solidarity. Incidentally, also in our moral tradition, the virtue that weighs those and makes the decision is the virtue of prudence. Now, I want to just emphasize prudence. In our tradition, St. Thomas Aquinas says that after the three theological virtues, faith, hope, love, which are infused in us at baptism, after those three virtues, the most important virtue is prudence. because prudence assesses a state of affairs and determines the best possible good in that state of affairs. So we're trying to balance subsidiarity and solidarity. We must exercise the virtue of prudence. Not what I want, what do I think is ideal, but in this state of affairs, what is the best possible good?
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I love how you took, what's the extreme of each one when it lacks its companion piece, if subsidiarity without solidarity and vice versa. And all right, so let's relate that to immigration. What happens when you have all of your focus on solidarity? What happens when it's extreme solidarity, for lack of a better word? And we both know, right? Aristotle says, you take a virtue taken to an extreme is no longer a virtue, right? So solidarity taken to an extreme without its accompanying principle of subsidiarity, as it relates to immigration, Father, what happens?
Well, what happens is you find the very un-Catholic principles of open borders or a merging of rights where the rights of the individual preempt the rights of the common good. So in essence, we begin to see semblances or full-blown socialism and even atheistic communism as this becomes more formalized, especially in terms of government structures. So we see very clearly, and again, the wisdom of the church. I mean, Mother Church has lived through fascism. She's lived through communism. She has lived through socialism. She is speaking from experience as she describes this delicate balance.
Yeah, but Father, it just sounds so uncharitable. I mean, what about fraternal love? What about everybody out there who wants to come to America?
Yes. So, for example, so as Catholics, let's go and apply these principles. So, as Catholics, as people of goodwill, we acknowledge the natural right given by God for immigration. That means if someone needs to relocate in order to provide for the basic needs of their family, to provide for their well-being, they have a natural God-given right to relocate, to immigrate. However, the Catholic Catechism of the Catholic Church, again, we see this balance, says that the host nation has also the right to determine how that natural right of immigration is exercised, and even can place juridic processes in order for that right to be exercised. Now, there we see the balance. Mother Church is saying the wealthy nations should be generous and be open to receiving as many as possible into its society. However, that same political authority must also care for those who are under its care, so the common good entrusted to it. In fact, the Catechism of the Catholic Church even says this, that wealthier nations are to be generous to the degree that they are able. So it can sound harsh, but I want to focus on the solidarity part, be as generous as you can, but then the subsidiarity part, you have to also take care of the host nation. Like if someone, just imagine the practicalities of this. If a nation were to allow complete, just any immigration that just come on in, just complete open borders, as we hear in the political jargon. Well, then ultimately what happens is the common good, the society that's hosting these immigrants, that's welcoming these immigrants, will eventually implode because it has not been cared for. It is the taxation and the well-being and the values of that common good, that society, which is sustaining what others are being invited into. Again, you can see the practicality here of Mother Church. Incidentally, also, the Catechism of the Catholic Church says very clearly that when one comes to a host nation, they are to take on and respect the material and spiritual values of the host nation.
Really? Interesting. Yeah. So I didn't know that.
That a group of immigrants should not come and create a sub-outlet of a cell.
A subculture.
Exactly, of their homeland. Now, certainly they can keep their home language,
their heritage and whatnot.
Yes, but they integrate and become a member of their new homeland. So I think that aspect as well in the Catechism sometimes gets overlooked.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, so, in our, it seems to me, Father, frankly, that the Democratic Party has sort of mastered the jargon of making Catholics feel that this concept of solidarity means open borders. It just seems like they're able to very successfully use the language of compassion and charity and all this kind of language to make us feel guilty for trying to have borders.
Yes.
But when you think about jobs, when you think about everything from the outsourcing of American manufacturing to allowing immigrants to come in like a flood and take American jobs from hardworking families, the unaccounted for cost for us to support, because once somebody's here, you do have to do something for them, right? I mean, if an illegal immigrant needs to go to the ER, we're going to take care of them. We have to, right? You can't just leave them laying there. So you have to, but that doesn't mean you have to let them in, because the cost to our nation has become so extensive. The cost in the educational system has become so extensive. And crime pours in like a flood. And, I personally, these are my words, not yours, but it seems to me that, the Democratic Party is trying to increase its base by just allowing a flood of immigrants, believing that eventually adds to their voting bloc. So, I think that there's a lot of false charity, a lot of false compassion, and I think a lot of Catholics are falling for it. And we forget that this nation that we have is not invincible. We actually have to take care of what we have, or we will lose it if we haven't already begun to lose it. So, I don't know what you have to say about that, but I feel like one party is much better than the other at pushing a certain narrative, and they seem to be winning. The Democratic Party seems to be winning in regards to, getting people to believe, getting the average Catholic in the pew to believe that Catholic social doctrine actually would push for open borders.
Yeah. So what I like to do is go back to the point you're making, to go back to the virtue of prudence, that we have to realize that when a political authority that has care of a specific common good, so the government of the United States that supervises the care of the United States, or the government of Guatemala who protects the people of Guatemala, and so on, and you can fill it in with any government or any people, that when immigration policy is created, it's an exercise of prudence, that the political authority is looking at all these questions you've raised in terms of healthcare, in terms of public services, in terms of welfare, in terms of the job market, and so on. And the political authority weighs all these factors in an exercise of prudence and says, okay, this is the number of immigration, the percentage of immigration that we can have here in our country for this duration of time. So I think that first it comes back to just respecting the fact that the political authority has done this work and is exercising this prudence in order to both care for the common good under its care, subsidiarity, as well as be open to immigrants and those entering into its society, so solidarity. So at first I just want to emphasize that, because sometimes I don't think people realize that when our legal immigration percentage is formed, when those numbers are formed, that's a lot of work that reflects a genuine care for both the common good of the respective people, as well as a desire to be open. So just to emphasize that, and also just to highlight, going on what you were saying, Connor, that people speak of the charity of solidarity,
right?
And that's appropriate. And we can speak almost not so much maybe as a false charity, but we can begin to speak perhaps as of an incomplete charity. Because if we speak of the charity of solidarity, we cannot forget as Catholics to speak of the charity of subsidiarity. For example, where my parish is located in Lancaster County in South Carolina, 63% of the people of this county live under the national poverty line, right?
Wow.
So people say, Father, we need to care about the people at the border. Yes, we do. Solidarity, absolutely. However, we also need to care for the people right down Highway 521, 63 of whom of our neighbors are under the national poverty line.
Wow.
And prudence is that balance of solidarity. We need to have care for people at the border and those in other lands who are suffering. but also subsidiarity, the charity of subsidiarity is we need to take care of the children and the families right down this highway that are also in poverty. So I think if we speak of the charity of subsidiarity, of solidarity, we cannot forget that charity of subsidiarity, because this isn't just some juridic argument. We're talking about families, we're talking about neighborhoods, we're talking about specific counties or people. This is very important. Like, this is, say, do I give this money to those who are suffering in a foreign land, or do I give this money to the people down the street? Do I divide it up? And what is that percentage? And that, again, is prudence. What can I do? What is practical? What is the best possible good for me and my family in this state of affairs?
So in regards to subsidiarity, what do you say about, globalism and how it relates to our own immigration policies? The world is becoming more globalized, especially with international markets. One country can kind of pull one lever, or even one big business can pull one lever, and there's a ripple effect throughout the entire world. So, it's definitely more global life than ever before, technology and communication. But does that mean that, the United States can't have its own border laws, its own border walls? It sounds like you're saying that church dictates that we must have some generous immigration policy for immigrants or refugees, especially from all over the place. But having a certain process to follow, having specific guidelines, is perfectly justified. But relate that concept of subsidiarity from a global management of immigration to the right of the United States Congress and the president and his executive office to control immigration in and out of this country.
Yeah, so first of all, as Catholics, we are very open to global entities, especially when it comes to international conflict or to the preservation of human rights or to the punishment of crimes against humanity and various things of that sort.
Yeah, like Nuremberg trials was pretty awesome,
Yeah, absolutely.
We convicted war criminals. I mean, that's kind of one of the main things. Sorry to interrupt, but the whenever you study natural law, you don't go very far until you start reading how that was the law that they used to convict the Nazi soldiers. It's pretty awesome.
Exactly. And in those respects, we are very open as Catholics to global entities, but we always see the global entity as a type of creation of the independent sovereign states that are members or that are a part of this. And we don't see that the global entity is the greater good over the sovereign state. Because as Catholics, again, who have this balance of subsidiarity and solidarity, we see that everything builds on the previous structure. And ultimately, it comes down to that the family is the cell of civilization, and the dignity of the human person is the foundation of it all. So again, as Catholics, we see this beautiful complementarity. Now, with that said, in different times has the church, particularly certain popes, emphasized one or the other? Yes, so for example, we see during World War II, leading up to World War II, I should say, Pope Pius IX heavily stressing subsidiarity because he saw that subsidiarity could help prevent what became eventually the Second World War. Today, Pope Francis emphasizes solidarity. He's concerned that things have become too isolated, and so he's emphasizing one. So whether it's one Pope emphasizing subsidiarity or another Pope emphasizing solidarity, these all have to be placed within the full doctrine, the treasury of this teaching, and ultimately marked by the exercise of prudence, always seeking this type of complementarity between the two. So I think, again, we just have to bring all these principles into play. In terms of, you're asking about the United States Congress, in terms of a global entity, I go back to the Catechism, which says that wealthier nations are to be generous to the degree that they are able. It's in there.
That's awesome.
Again, even the church sees this.
Yeah, well, all right. So you said that different popes emphasize different things. According to my count, Pope Francis, he mentioned solidarity 26 times in his encyclical, and he mentions subsidiarity 3 times. And he mentioned the word border 10 times and the wall 14 times. So, and he's not hiding it. I mean, you know, the very first section of the encyclical is called "Without Borders." I mean, it's you know, chapter 1, dark clouds over a closed world. I mean, it goes on and on, and it just seems that, you know, as I read it, I read every word, and it's not as if that there's something I can say, ha, that is absolutely incorrect. I got it. There it is. Mm-hmm. But it seems that the emphasis is virtually no emphasis on subsidiarity, and all the emphasis is on solidarity. So, you know, but at times other popes have emphasized other things. So, you know, for many of our, you know, viewers out there who have varying degrees of appreciation for Pope Francis's work, what is the authority of an encyclical compared to, say, the Catechism?
Yep. So first, I'm glad you mentioned, Connor, the Holy Father's new encyclical, Fratelli Tutti. And to your question, an encyclical, the word itself actually just means circular. As if, like, you know, something is being distributed, it's being passed around. And an encyclical, a circular letter, is being given by the Pope when he feels that some aspect of the church's doctrine or the life of the church has been neglected or not focused on, or he sees some particularly moral ill that he wants to address, or doctrinal ill. And so an encyclical is a way for the Holy Father to accentuate or highlight something within the vast tradition of our church and say, hey, we need to pay attention to this. Now, would I prefer that the Holy Father would give a little more mention to subsidiarity as a help to balance and as a point to have theological complementarity? Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a moral theologian. I would love that, right? But I also see that Pope Francis has a father's heart. He cares very deeply as universal shepherd for what's happening in the church. And in his exercise of his office, he chooses to emphasize almost in an exclusive way certain areas that he sees lacking in the world and in the church today. And in Fratelli Tutti, it's solidarity. Like he definitely, it's again, almost exclusive just on solidarity. And again, as universal shepherd, that's great. He's drawing our attention to this. I would say that, you know, as theologians and as the broader people of God, we have to step back and then place that within the broader tradition and say, yes, okay, this is a heavy emphasis on solidarity. Well, I can go and point to another encyclical by Pius IX and say, look at this, it emphasizes subsidiarity, you know, like both to diminish National Socialism and also to put fascism in its place.
Yeah.
So what do we do? To your question, what is the authority of an encyclical? Well, it's we need to respect it. It's the Holy Father stressing something within the body of teachings of the church. But again, it's a way of looking at it, and this is very casual, is an encyclical is like a memo from the Pope to the rest of the church saying, hey, don't forget this, or hey, this is really important, or hey, everyone's been thinking this way. I really think, and we need to be thinking this way as Christians. So they are binding in one sense, but they're always in service to the full teachings of the church, and they have to be placed within that full tradition.
Yeah, no, that's very good. And, you know, I know that history has a tendency to judge, you know, previous writings of the popes in different degrees of appreciation. And my personal view, my opinion, is that this encyclical will be judged over time to be one that, you know, not just overemphasizes solidarity, but underemphasizes subsidiarity by his persistent push for a global governance of migration. I mean, he's overt about that there should be a global governance of migration. And, you know, but, you know, that I guess in a sense that's because he sees it as such a serious issue that, you know, and as you mentioned, you know, when there's war crimes, we have to have international bodies handle that. I mean, there are times for global bodies to do certain things. I don't personally see the migration issue as rising to that level, but our Holy Father perhaps sees it in a different way. But I think that the long-term concern with this encyclical isn't just an issue of whether the United States should have border walls and should they be 8 feet or 12 feet high. It's not that. And it's not just that he's pushing for a global body of authority, but because again, there can be good bodies, international bodies that do things, but the way in which he emphasizes it, to me, seems to downplay substantially the doctrine of subsidiarity. And so I think, as long after I'm long gone, either this will be quoted by subsequent popes and theologians as something wonderfully in keeping with the intellectual tradition of the church, or it'll be kind of pushed to the side and somewhat ignored, as I'm sure many other writings of popes have been done. Those are my words, not yours. That's my opinion. But I think that how people in life, whether it's the Pope or whether it's me, emphasize certain things is quite important. And here I see an emphasis that I have a hard time reconciling with subsidiarity. But to bring it back home and in conclusion, Father, when people are going to the voting booth very soon, and they're trying to be people of goodwill, they're trying to be good conscience voters, and things like immigration are going to be talked about virtually all the time. Now, it's interesting that immigration has been such a huge issue over the years, but with COVID, it's we're not talking about it as much. But I mean, one of the main reasons Donald Trump got elected was because his talking about the wall. We're not talking about the wall that much anymore. We're talking about COVID. So, but I do think that it's still on people's minds, and I hope that people see that immigration is extraordinarily important. It is an app, like as you said earlier on, it is a moral issue, and there is a moral mandate by Holy Mother Church to be welcoming to immigrants. However, only if we're able to take care of our home first and those that we have an immediate concern for. So, any last words on that? Any words to kind of spur on the conscience of that voter who is about to mail in their ballot or soon standing in a line with a face mask on to cast their vote? Any last thoughts on the topic of immigration and a good, solid Catholic conscience?
Yes, I would say in terms of the Catholic believer who's forming his or her conscience, I would say that delicate balance between subsidiarity and solidarity, and not to forget the charity of subsidiarity, that a political authority guards and protects the people who have elected them, this political authority, that they are paying taxes for. This political authority is distributing those taxes. So as we speak about, and rightly so, the charity of solidarity, I would just say to all Catholic believers, do not forget the charity of subsidiarity. Charity begins at home. It doesn't end there, but it starts at home.
And my final word would be, I believe in subsidiarity so much that it begins at home that I tell my children, you're able to do the dishes, so you have to do the dishes. See, I'm practicing the art of subsidiarity by telling my kids, take care of yourself, do your own dishes. You don't need the higher level of authority coming in here and doing it for you. You're able to do it yourself. When you are incapable of doing it, when your 8-year-old elbow doesn't have the grease in it to clean the pan, I'll come in as the higher level and help you out. Did I get the principle right, Father?
Bravo.
Father, it's always nice talking to you. Thanks a lot. God bless you and your ministry and your wonderful parish, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.